Now let's talk about the buffer size usage. When we're working in audio buffer sizes or audio buffer rates for recording in a digital audio workstation, such as Logic or Pro Tools, any number of those items, we have to look at why we would need to raise or lower the buffer rate and what it's really doing. And so, again, if we kind of look at these options, we during recording we can have lower buffer rates because if we look at the data packets, um, coming from RAM, we usually have sufficient information to be able to do the recording process, and it's sending out a constant flow to the CPU. So this is kind of this water wheel model where you kind of see this taking place, right? So these are moving information from the hard drive and back and forth out to the CPU to feel like there's a fluid constant motion. But as we get to using, the buffer rate during editing and mixing, especially when we have a high track count or we got a lot of information rolling, the higher the buffer rate, it allows us to delay the start of the playback. But by raising the buffer, it creates a bigger wheel in general to use because RAM needs more time to process heavier tasks. So what it's going to do is it's actually going to delay the start from the moment you push play to the moment it actually feeds. So let's take a look at this actually kind of in a more fluid and working manner. Let me pull this out of the way so we're not really keeping an eye on that. With the buffer size raised, a lot of times inside of the DAW it's considered a buffer size in terms of samples. But what's happening is we're actually asking for our RAM wheel in this wheel model to be a larger wheel. By being a larger wheel, it's going to actually be carrying more load. It's going to be picking up more information, and as it rotates from here, what we see is if we say, okay, right here at my cursor, put my cursor here. Right here at my cursor is going to be my starting wheel. I push play, right? So this is me pushing play. And now we start the wheel and it's starting to pick up the data, which means that by the time it comes all the way around and it spills into the channel, the constant flow begins to start. Now playback begins. But as soon as playback starts, it will now, from that point on, feel like fluid motion coming from the RAM, even with those heavy loads and those heavy tasks. So you'll see a delay in that start of the playback, but what you should see is that fluid motion from the RAM being able to handle those heavier tasks and, of course, effectively, hopefully, operate in editing and mixing and processing. Now, when does all that occur? We need all that higher stuff, the higher buffer rate, with when we have higher track count, when we have more plugins or heavier plugins. So when we're running things like auto-tune or reverb or virtual instruments, it's really going to be heavy. Like there's an 88 key sampled piano that Pro Tools has, and theirs from Avid, and there's another one from Native Instruments. And it's like you do any one of those, it's going to be a heavy CPU DSP usage, and because of that, we got to raise that buffer rate. So we have to find a comfy spot where we can move that in order to be able to give us that fluid playback and that fluid ability to work with it and process it.